Here we go.
Ready, set, go!
Coming to you live, it's the Auto Hub Show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I was at Larry Pullman's seminar. So happy I came, having such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So,
Told you twice.
Take advantage.
Thank you for having me here.
I'm at Larry Feldman's seminar, and what I found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more money you spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon and then the time to line are the most important things that we look for. I'm Mike Burrell. I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
All right.
Hello. Ian, are you
Sorry,
there?
I'm having some bandwidth. Yeah, I'm here. Just bandwidth.
I was just telling them, Ian, about how you bragged in the new place and wow, how fast your internet is, and it's incredible. And right now you are just a faceless voice.
Hey, if you miss us live. Yeah.
So
anyway, we're the coppers in this building. They're supposedly gonna have fiber by the end of the year, supposedly, if you believe them. But anyway,
so you could expect the Auto Hub show to have glitches every show, but that's okay. I'm much prettier than Ian.
All right, so I'm going to go over to good morning and welcome. I'm going to go over to some book recommendations if I can get this going. Okay, there we go. Share screen. So I was trying to find some books that were on the people side of things. So the first one was Powerful Phrases, Dealing with Difficult Customers, and Powerful Phrases. Looks like there's two different ones from the same guy. So go ahead, Jeff.
Well, welcome everybody, and of course we do apologize for the glitches. We will get around them as always, so thank you for being here. And of course, the views and opinions shared today is those of our guests and not necessarily that of the Auto Hub show or Ian and Jeff. Ian.
And then the show today is about customers. So how to fix how we deal with customers is the topic. And just so you know, we're also going to be at Used Car Week in Scottsdale and SEMA. I'm not sure on the SotoCon yet, but that's something that we may be looking at. So if you are at either of those shows or any of those shows, you can see us there live. Bye for now. Go ahead, Jeff. Hey, if you missed us live.
Well, as we started talking about while Ian started his his temporary shyness, this show today is about how we're going to fix our customer experience. And it was started by a post made by Sarah about a customer of hers or a friend of hers that was trying to get a car. And I started to say it's very shocking. And before I say this, I have to tell you, I feel so guilty talking negative so many shows. I am generally desperately try to be positive about things. And I hate it when I get calls, and I'm amongst my circle of people that I know, I'm kind of like the car guy. I complain when I get a phone call from somebody I have to talk to in 5 years. Jeff, how's things? How's the family? How's that? By the way, I'm trying to buy a car. And but that's just the way it is, Um, yes, we're in a better mood when you're here, Joe. Thank you. But it's a shame because not only is it happening in North Carolina, not only is it happening in Florida, not only is it happening, up here in Vancouver or over in Montreal. We hear it from Sean Armour over there. It's happening everywhere. And we are proving to people that we are what they say we are in the car business. We're a bunch of pirates, horror, and you come in and we want to take your money. And I'm going to go to Sarah to answer this first question because she prompted this. There's Ian. Hi, Ian. But I repeat again, just a quick thing where I was reached out to by a friend of mine who said, can you help his colleague who was trying to buy a Toyota Corolla GR? Had an order in for a year, maybe 2 years, had heard nothing, and finally got a phone call and they said, we think we've got a car for you. By the way, what are you trading? I'm not trading. Oh, are you going to finance? I'm not financing. Oh, are you going to be putting on the jet engines and no. Oh, I can't sell you a car. Not even, somebody that would learn from Larry, not even saying, sir, we have an order. This guy's done all this to the car. Are you willing to buy this because it's on the car? Lie. Let's be honest. Lie. Do what they think you're doing, but white lie or whatever you call it. A good-natured lie. My apologies. At least make him feel like that he's not a sucker. But Sarah, I'm going to get you to answer this question. And before we do that, just quickly, just explain the post that you put, please.
Yeah, so this was an interesting thread because it blew up. I mean, it was something that, this is very close to my heart because, with Quantum 5, the company that I represent today, we really, really focus heavy on how important people are in the conversation, on both sides of the equation. We believe that people are a dealership's biggest asset when it comes to how they gain business and how they help their communities. But also we look at it on the other side and we know that customers deserve a better experience. Customers deserve to have a great experience when they're buying something that is going to be, let's be honest, one of the biggest purchases that they make or maintain in their household. So this post was prompted because I had a family member of mine who will not go into a dealership or go into a conversation saying that she knows somebody in the industry. She's doing her own research. She's doing her own due diligence in her shopping process. But it started out with, she had an older Acura, and this Acura was just at the point of its life where it was now at a value point going to be more expensive to maintain than the actual dollar amount the car was worth. And it still could have got a lot more years left, but if she's gonna spend $2,000, $3,000 to fix something, something else down the line is gonna fix or break probably, in the next 2-3 years. So she was at this point where she was car shopping and loved the Acuras and wanted to continue it, was servicing the vehicle at an Acura dealership, had a relationship with this dealership, was already a loyal customer, had been, going there talking to the service advisor about this whole thing. Well, how it prompted, as soon as she was looking to purchase, a newer pre-owned vehicle, all of a sudden everything shifted. So she originally got figures in the service drive, had worked with probably what I would assume to be somebody that was doing, service equity mining or service to sales, that kind of conversation. They had given her a quote on a vehicle. They had the stock number. They had everything. They discussed pricing while she was in for her service visit. And she was just coming back the following day to secure that purchase. Well, at that point, they hit her with a market adjustment. And it wasn't an addendum really in that sense. It was an additional $5,000 for the sake of just slapping $5,000. She wasn't getting paint protection. She wasn't getting a warranty. There wasn't anything else. It was just, oh, sorry, it's a market adjustment for this particular car. And that left a really bad taste in her mouth. So she left. She left that dealership and left that conversation to then go and look online for a like kind vehicle. So long story short, it was frustrating because at every turn she had 3 different experiences where these games were transpiring and where she was getting to the point of actually buying the car. And at that point, something else suddenly popped up into the conversation where, oh, sorry, that internet price that we quoted you, it's actually going to be a little bit more because of XYZ. Some insert excuse here as to why we're adjusting that pricing. And it was frustrating for me because at that point, that's when I entered the conversation with her, because she wanted to just have an understanding of what is really the price of this car. What in looking at it, can you make sense of this deal that I'm getting? Can you make sense of the buyer's order? Is this something I should be paying or not paying? I'm not really clear. And so that's what prompted that LinkedIn post. And what was so fascinating about that post, there were a lot of opinions shared on it. It was, over 150 comments where people were weighing in on various things. And some people, it looked like I touched the third rail in that conversation with some of the dealerships that were chiming in. But the overwhelming majority of people, what was so fascinating about the comments was that there's so many people that are in this industry that are aware of how to buy a car. They understand the sales process. They probably have more sympathy to a dealership than anybody else. And even they were experiencing the same things. So that's really the jump point to have this entire conversation and episode today.
Well, that's, it's amazing. It boggles my mind because there is no shame. Like when this fella told me this, I thought to myself, I know the CEO of this group. There's a 60 stores, I think they have. I know the COO. I know the director of blah, 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 the this and that. And I was ticked. And then I said to myself, why bother? Because I phoned the CEO, is going to go, gee, sorry, talk to the COO. Talk to the COO, he's going to go all the way down the line. And they're just going to say, oh, I'm really sorry. And they don't care. And so the first question to answer is, what the heck is going on? How can we get away with this? I don't understand it, Sarah.
Well, we actually have a question from LinkedIn, I believe. Whatever the individual customer's perception of auto retail is, it's earned, for better or worse. An auto retail experience today isn't compared to any other auto retail experience. It's compared to any other desirable retail experience, i.e. Amazon. The customers engage. Are we truly the relationship business or one-time transaction business? Internationally alone isn't enough for anyone. Intentionality alone isn't enough for anyone who wants to earn a recurring customer.
Excellent. Sarah.
Well, I look at it this way. So my company today, we absolutely want dealerships to understand it and really see value in not only the retention model for customers, but the retention model of their employees. And I think we can all agree that today, across every industry, but we're experiencing it very heavy in automotive, there's a talent shortage. We have people that are really, really looking at careers and considering companies because of what the company represents, what they're doing for their communities, what they're doing for the environment, what they're doing for people to better the world in general. And I think the conversation that we need to be having in our rooftops is, okay, so if we have a talent shortage, if we want people to see this as a viable career path in the next 5-10 years, what are some of the changes that we have to make internally about the messages that we send our employees? And what was so compelling about this entire experience was that the salesperson was being dictated to give these figures and go down this rabbit hole from management that was sitting on high in a sales tower that was not having any engagement in the conversation. So you have this third party person who probably, let's just be honest, in the last 3 years, probably was new to the business, has never held, a sales experience where now they're having objections with interest rates and inventory coming back into more of the pipeline. So they've lived in this totally different reality than a lot of people in the automotive industry that have been in the industry for as long as I have. The challenges that we were facing in 2009, 2010, they've never even experienced in the point of their career. Well, now they're getting into this industry where now these objections are coming up. They're having tougher conversations and they don't know what to do. And so what's going to happen? They've got managers, they're still like, nope, just blow them out of here. I don't want to talk to that customer. She's ridiculous. I know that our inventory, it might have been sitting on the lot for 30 days, but I still think I can get an extra $5,000 on it. Tell her to just go kick rocks and we'll follow up with her. Okay, that's not a good approach. So now you put the salesperson in this awkward position where they're walking that line of having to relay this news back to an individual. They don't feel good about it. Nobody likes having that kind of conversation. And then of course, what happened in the service side of the business? You had somebody that had serviced her car consistently since she bought it new. So you're talking in this case, over a decade of service visits going to this one particular dealership where she was consistently getting maintenance on her car. And you just threw that completely to the side. So now you've created another experience in your fixed ops department where your service advisors are now frustrated as employees because they're dealing with that fallout when that customer is no longer coming to that store. And they're having all these other conversations where, well, wait a minute, I thought I gave you this opportunity because she was considering trading her car because the service bill was too much. Now you're telling me that she's not a real buyer and you kicked her down the road. Well, now as a service advisor, I've lost that customer too. My sales department just erased that person from the possibility of retention. So, in this conversation, I think the important thing that dealerships have to ask themselves is that, do we want to continue that mindset that we've had since COVID with our sales team? Because if so, we're going to start seeing some staffing challenges because people aren't going to want to engage in those kinds of conversations. And the second part is, are you going to be willing to see the fallout that happens with your service advisors when that other side of the house is experiencing the fallout from what's happening on the variable side? So I think those are the two pieces that we have to consider and really discuss today.
Well, here's the shame of it all. We've talked about this for quite a while. And we've talked about, Peter and I, of course, the Great Reset and everything else. And it just isn't coming. And, new cars are starting to come, but they're not coming in droves except for Chrysler dealers. Stellantis, excuse me. So the question, it's a tough one because we talked that they should do it. I'm going to go to Doug, who's our next guest, Doug Reeves. Doug, introduce yourself, please, and just tell us what's going on. What the heck?
Hey, look, Doug Reeves with A to Z Sync, and Sarah, you were articulating what we all have been talking about for quite a while. I mean, this industry's black eye continues to just get blacker and blacker. I mean, other than telemarketers and congressmen, salespeople still have the worst reputation, and the industry's not doing much about it. And we've talked at A to Z Sync, our philosophy is we have to change the customer's perception of buying a car at a dealership, and it all starts at the top of the store with a culture shift. And you have to enact a culture shift, and the only way this is going to gain traction is when more and more dealers start doing that, because eventually, I mean, it's the vocal minority that are giving the black eye. But I think the vast majority of people would agree in our industry, no, we've got to do something different, but they don't have the chutzpah to do so. And when dealerships actually do adopt a change in their culture, when they stop providing jobs and start providing careers, when they start developing people with a long-term view of, I'm going to build my own farm system so that when I have turnover in management, I just move people up because they're already speaking our language, they already breathe our breaths, then it'll change. But it's going to take a while for that to happen. I mean, you're exactly right. Hiring good people is tough. I mean, Larry, you're out hiring people all the time or helping dealers hire people all the time, but it's still, can I get a career out of this, or is it going to be a part-time job? I saw something the other day on LinkedIn where a guy was like, I'm looking for a job, I've been out of work, and someone said, oh, just go become a salesman at a dealership. Okay, if that's just like the fallback, that's not what we're looking for. So but it all starts, as I said, it starts with a culture change. It starts with an adoption of transparency. You know what confounds me, and I would be curious what you guys think on this. Um, every dealer, every GM has their buddy that comes in to buy a car. And that buddy is whisked through the process quickly and probably gets a really good deal and may or may not actually service the car at the dealership. He just wanted the good deal. But we give him all this concierge service. But then the customer that's actually going to pay a price for a car that's going to be loyal to the service department, we don't afford them the same type of an experience. Doesn't make sense whatsoever. And I'll end on this. All too often we hear the term customer experience bantied about. And that is so short-sighted because we really need to think of it on a larger scale. It's got to be about the dealership experience. It's got to start with the sales staff. It's got to start with the employees, and then it'll trickle down to the customer. And all too often they don't think that way. So
Well,
there you go.
I have to share some experience because I'm in a new city and I had to get a out of province or out of state inspection. So I had to go to a new dealership. And it was interesting because they gave me this keychain with my service or sort of inspection that says customers for life on it. So I was kind of laughing because the dealership I used to service it with in Vancouver, which happens to service the same brand of vehicle, even though they're not a franchise dealer, they didn't do that. They gave me this similar keychain, but it didn't have that printed on it. So I'm curious as to whether that's a good long-term strategy with them as I continue to service my car there or not. But I have to say the first experience was quite good. But at the end of the day, you can pay lip service to it, but what are you actually doing to create that experience? But go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, before we move on to Peter, thanks, Doug, for that comment. It's very, very spot on. Brian raised his virtual hand. Brian, if you'd wanted to share your point there.
Yeah, so I worked in this for one of the OEMs and driving digital retailing and a luxury client experience. And it goes, what we're talking about, a lot of it right now is just, it's symptoms. And a lot of it, the core issue is that people in this industry still think, and dealer owners and dealer principals still think that they're selling cars and servicing cars, and they're not. We're in the hospitality business and we're in the experience business and we're in the digital business. We are digital retailers providing the hospitality experience. And until they understand that core philosophy of what business we're in, they won't adopt this type of thinking. They have to understand that we have shifted the narrative. We used to have a website, and there was a price on it, and there was the in dealership price, but that's all commingled now. We are all digital retailers, and we're in the hospitality business. And until, like I said, until they come to that realization, a lot of the behaviors won't change.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting, and that's a very good point. Before I turn to Peter, because I know he'll take this ball and run with it. I'm a football fan, but I'm not rabid. I don't know all the stuff, but I can tell you this, I'll guarantee for a lot of years, there was never a meeting between Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, and his general manager and coach during the years of Brady and all the gang there. There was never a meeting like, what the hell are you guys doing? You got a problem here. You got to fix it. Kraft just sat back and collected the money because things were damn good. And, good for him. He hired the right people. But guess what? All of a sudden, the boys leave, and now they're not the golden team there is. And now I'll guarantee there's a lot of those meetings going on. Instead of going off to the boat, and from everything I've heard about Kraft, he's not a bad guy, but he's sitting there in whatever the hometown is, because it ain't totally Boston. But they're having these meetings, and this year we've got to do it, and rah, 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 rah. And that is what will happen to dealers, because right now it's the Tom Brady days, and they got people coming in, and they will do almost whatever the customer will do, almost whatever they're told to do, so they can get a car. Like the person I know with his Corolla GR, the same darn thing. He didn't do it because he's not that kind of guy, but there was no way he would do it. Peter, what's
hey, Jeff, one thing before you jump in with Peter, because there's a point within your point. The reason that Brady left and the reason that he went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and got them a Super Bowl was he didn't like the way he was treated by Belichick. Belichick's mentality was we're all the same. So even if he wasn't looking to get his butt kissed, he was looking for something a little more friendly. And there's a huge lesson in there. As a recruiter, I'm very grateful for the insensitive treatment by sales managers and service managers because it's making me wealthier and wealthier. But the point is, if you're not nurturing and taking care of your people, you can see even a guy worth millions and millions, probably the most famous athlete other than a non-soccer player in the world, can get turned off. I'm sorry, I thought that point needed to be drawn out.
Well, thank you. That's a very good point. Peter.
Well, thank you for having me and knowing that this is a very sore spot for me and the reason why I got back into this business after being semi-retired for a number of years. What's going on with how we treat the customers? There's a number of points that we can look at, and Sarah and Doug very eloquently and brought up the ignorance of this marketplace to what the customers are looking for. One of the things that I look at is we have a complete ignorance to long-term customer value, absolute ignorance to it. We are instant gratification, and the internet and digital retailing has brought that into the forefront of a dealership, and they believe that that's the most important thing to go to. I did a chart based on one of the major vendors out there did a study. 80 to 90% of conversions are or conversion rate potential is on repeat customers. 70 to 80% are on referral customers. 50% are on appointments, but yet the dealerships and salespeople and sales managers and everything else chase the 5% conversion rate of the internet lead, the 10% of the phone call, and the 25% of the person on the lot. It's just this mentality that is reversed to what it should be looking at. Why are we spending all this money to go after people that we have the lowest possible chance of conversion? And doing so, we neglect the people that have put us into the position that we're in. It's a one and done transactional mentality. They're looking for the quick buck. It's a very short term thinking, and shows a lack of caring and a lack of training to their staff. And where does that all transpire from? The top. And the top has to make their decisions and drive it down properly. And I'm, like Larry said, I'm thankful because with people having this mentality, it's creating opportunity for me to go into dealerships to teach it and use software that is going to effectively change that mentality, like Doug's. And it's just crazy. I look at it, and I'll give you the quick rundown of my experience. My wife was in the Tesla, got a small bump on the back end of it. It was $3,000. It took them 9 months to write off the car because they couldn't provide parts to it. It was $85,000 in rental cost. It was $175,000 in replacement value insurance, and it was another $70,000 to the body shop for holding the car as it disintegrated amongst itself. So it was over a $350,000 claim for a $3,000 bump. And I knew at that point it was broken. I went to the dealership. I bought a new vehicle. I went to the dealership I worked at. I knew the owner. I knew everybody there. My best friend was president of Stellantis at one time, back when it was Chrysler. So I had the opportunity to buy it at a lower rate. I knew I'd had to factory order it to get that. So I just said, I'll take one off the lot. Here's my credit card. Just give me one. At the end of it all, not only did the price go up 3 times after I purchased the vehicle, it was the worst experience I've ever had in the dealership. And I bought 7 cars there. They lost the long-term customer value from me. They lost probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential profit moving forward, just short term. And that's one of the issues that we face today.
Oh, you're so spot on there. I mean, what's crazy to me is the value of the long-term customer, the value of a great dealership experience. Not only your existing customers love it, they tell others, but the flip side is if your employees are proud to work at your store, they're not ashamed to say they're a car salesperson. That's why we call them client advisors, because have them do more, have them be proud of it. That is only going to drive business too, because they're not ashamed to say what they do. And I think in a lot of store salespeople are kind of like, I took this job because it's a pit stop before I find my real career. And it shouldn't be that way at all.
100%. I mean, I always use the example when you go into pick Starbucks or your favorite coffee place. Before all this mobile ordering, they paid attention to the person in front of them who's actually buying the coffee, whatever. Now it's like you're a third-class citizen because you're in the store.
Mm-hmm.
But let's service the person who ordered from their car better than the person in front of us who's actually trying to buy something right here. So it's kind of interesting that options aren't always the best thing. Unless they're executed at a high level. And a lot of it is, before we start adding all these options that could be good or bad, let's get the experience right to start with. Like, let's figure out how we're going to deploy all this stuff versus, 20 options that may not make sense. Great comment.
Ian, you're giving people way too much credit, unfortunately. We would like to think that everybody's thinking everything through, but I think everybody on this call will agree, other than the really successful dealers, the hands-on guys, most of these places make money in spite of themselves, not because of the Machiavellian plans they have in place.
Right now they do, but that model could change significantly. And that's why I'm kind of, I mean, it sounds bad, but I'm thrilled as hell that inventory is coming back and the dealers are having to take a hard look at their processes, because let's face it, 21, 22, they could be ignorant to it. A monkey could have sold a car in high gross to anybody, but now it's back to, hey, guess what? We've got to get on our game. And it's exciting to see dealers that are starting to focus in that direction.
Well, it's
actually
funny.
a shame that we are.
And
It
I
is
called
a shame.
with the RV Association in the US, the gentleman who works with all the RV dealers. And he said, not only is our sales process usually 6 to 8 months, but now we've got more inventory than ever before. But on top of that, it's very expensive to hold that inventory. So it was kind of interesting to sort of hear that at a much larger per unit cost structure. But I would argue that's the same because your overall cost per vehicle is up today versus what it was 3 years ago anyway. So yeah, the numbers are not in your favor and you've got to get this done. But more importantly, I think the thing that a lot of dealers don't look at is they're out trying to find new customers. But if you spent more time hanging on to the customers you already have, that makes a lot more sense. And the lifetime value of customers is a great point. Anyway, next question.
Actually, Ian, we should. Wendy's got her hand up, and
okay,
and it looks like the phone's moving in and out, so it's great.
It's my iPad. It's sitting on my tabletop, but for some reason, it's like possessed. But that would make sense,
Stop it! It's dramatic effect.
Okay, there you go. I'll use that going forward. Okay. So, and my good morning, beautiful people. So I want to back up and add layers to what a couple of you already said. So, Ian, spot on with the Starbucks commercial idea. Something that boggles me is a customer, regardless of the source, right? And I understand the mentality of you want to handle the people in front of you in the showroom. And that's why BDCs were created. My first one was in 2007 because the salespeople were constantly distracted by live ups on the fresh ups on the lot. So if they did take the phone ups, they never made them into the CRM, right? So BDCs are the note takers and appointment makers. Well, then it's a ring to it. But anyway, buying centers. Now that we have buying teams and we're buying cars and we're pushing people to the showroom so that dealers can acquire from private parties, they're making those customers wait if they don't have ample appraisers on staff in the showroom, because all of the managers are closing internet and fresh up deals. And the people that are there to sell their car, you're trying to get a new look in the community of someone that will buy your car and avoid you having to have people come to your home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all know what it means, but they're not prioritizing. But then to back it up further, to the desk managers that are sitting there putting words, loading the lips of the salespeople with the Foursquare or whatever you call it nowadays at the desk, they're not thinking it through. They're kind of like passing the buck. They're kind of like, and the problem with that is that we talk about people, process, and accountability. We don't talk about from the top down. We think GM to GSM to sales staff or over to BDC or over to service or whatever. The DP has to hold the GM or whomever it is overseeing the whole operation, because that's where it starts. And if the GM feels like, or if the GM delegates to the GSM who thinks it's okay for him to sit in his tower, as it was mentioned, get up off your butt and go to the desk and help the guy with the deal or whatever. Show them how it's done. Don't just feed them some words and the customer is going to know it's ridiculous. The salesperson probably approaches his desk again as if he's about to present something ridiculous. So how are you going to build a culture? How are you going to build faith, trust in the experience at your dealership? It goes back to, and it's not on April's stores, so you're good, April, but you know, my story when I went in to see if I could sell my 2020 Ford Fusion. I'm going to condense it, but it was ridiculous. Short version was they tried to deduct $2,500 from the value of my car to sell it to them for a supposed oil leak that they had a picture of. I've had my car in the driveway for the 3 weeks since I did that. There's not a drop. There is no oil leak. Plus, it's bumper to bumper a 2020 with 58,000 miles on it. So Ford could have done whatever it was under warranty. That wasn't mentioned. I talked to no less than 5 managers that called me in the first week after my visit. None of them seemed to have known what transpired with the previous caller, nor did they seem to have any details. So it starts way, way up, and it's broken in so many ways. But the sad part is we keep talking about what's wrong. We keep these same problems. I remember sitting at a desk as an internet salesperson, sitting in my manager's desk waiting for a quote because I was cradle to grave internet sales and I was not allowed to do my own pricing. And I sat there, and then I had a Mazda manager that was real high energy, and he was like Ricochet Rabbit, bing, bing, bing. And I followed that man. I mean, I followed him, and I sat there, and you guys all know me, most of you. I'm a little bit persistent. I'll sit right there. Yes, I need a price. My customer comes first. So it's broken all kinds of ways, but how do we get them to listen? How do we effect change? That's what we need to decide.
It's just very interesting because Ian has the next question.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you brought that up with appraisals. We did a show on should we appraise cars, I think it was a couple weeks ago. And I did a poll on LinkedIn. 100% of the respondents said, yes, we should. We should physically go look at that car. So that was kind of interesting. And thanks for that thought. It may seem obvious, but what are the ramifications of 3 years of this behavior? And obviously, we can talk about solutions. What do you think are the ramifications and how do we solve that? Let's start with Sarah. It's been a while. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, so I mean, I touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but the ramifications of this is we have to ask ourselves, do we want the dealership franchise model to live for the next 10, 15, 20 years? Do we want to pass our businesses? If you're a dealership owner, are you wanting to pass it on to the next generation, someone in your family? Or are you wanting to just see if a big auto group is going to buy you out and lump it into their retail model? What's fascinating is you look at other countries and the franchise retail model that we have in the United States, that doesn't exist in a lot of other countries. That whole sales experience that we're describing today does not happen when you go overseas. And so in the United States, we have to ask ourselves this question. We have franchise laws. There's, of course, Elon Musk, who's lobbying against some of them in states to gain market share and things that he's doing with Tesla. And we, of course, need to look at that and think about, okay, so dealerships are so important to our communities and they're so important to the lives of our employees, including ourselves as an owner. If you're an owner of a dealership, you're benefiting from that dealer franchise model and your family is benefiting from that model. But we have to look at it and go, if we want this to live and we want this to be part of the reality of our country and the reality of our communities, then we have to address the problems that our customers are experiencing because our customers are telling us with their feedback and eventually with their dollars, they're not going to play these games anymore. They don't want to have these kinds of conversations where they're at a dealership for 5-6 hours being drawn through some crazy process. Their car's not getting appraised because nobody's going to get up to help them because, in that scenario, well, maybe they're not buying another car, they're just selling it. So if the culture in that organization can't be impacted, it's going to spell a really, really bad situation in a few years when this all catches up. So we have to really start there. We have to think about the people in our organizations and our culture. And you're right, it absolutely starts at the top. What is the conversation, though, we need to be having with the people at the top? Does it come from the OEM? Does it come from these things? Because we have a lot of thought leaders on this call today and a lot of people that have experience in retail automotive. And yet, when these types of behaviors continuously persist, where's the point that we have to look in the mirror and go, like, what are we doing as an industry to call this out? How do we fix this going forward? And there are some great operators and some great people that we know that run organizations where they don't tolerate this kind of stuff. And this is a non-negotiable. They're going to treat that customer experience. But I think it also boils down to what we talked about earlier with those silos. We can't ignore that whole customer experience for the sake of the sale opportunity. We have to create a strategy where we're looking at this and we're going, this is somebody that we have to find ways to build that value for them to want to come service with us. I just want to share one quick thing that I thought was really compelling. So, a lot of dealerships, we put a lot of emphasis on how we price our sales, how we put some of these things in the marketplace. There's the conversation around service. What was so fascinating to me locally in the North Carolina market when we were looking at some of the pricing when it came to maintenance, the dealerships often had more competitive pricing for maintenance services than the independent shops and service departments or service companies that were coming to their house, like mobile technicians, things like that. And yet customers, when you go look on a Facebook recommendation page, chances are you're probably not seeing the dealership's name being dropped in that hat from a recommendation when someone is looking for someone to come out and help do an oil change in their driveway, do something at their house. The dealership's name is absent a lot of times in those dialogues, and we have to shift that. So it is going to be a culture change. I think from our standpoint, we have to ask ourselves, at what point do we need to have those really tough conversations with operators and owners and say, this is it. Either we got to get out of our own way or we're not going to exist as a business the way it stands today in the next 10 years.
Hey, Sarah, but think about how entrenched some of this negative thinking is. Now, I was a dealer, and I'm not bragging and I'm not complaining, but I never pulled anybody into my office and said, I'm firing you. And when somebody said, why? Well, he made too much money.
Mm-hmm.
So if you chop managers because instead of saying, well, you earned the money, now let's find somebody to do it for 140 instead of 180, or you chop salespeople's pay plans, you're teaching them to be greedy. You're teaching them to hang on to every dollar because it's going to get chopped off from the top. And then when you exacerbate that with the fact that how good business was in the last 2 years, salespeople making crazy money, owners making crazy money, it only took a bad situation and made it worse. But I'm with you 100%. At some point, writes the old literary explanation at Scott Fitzgerald, how they go bankrupt gradually and then all of a sudden. It's really easy not to shift, just like it's real easy to load your lot up with cars and not pay attention, and all of a sudden you're not underwater. You're like, you're at the bottom of the ocean with Titanic.
Yeah, and we do have a dealer on, April. Maybe April wants to come on camera or come off mute and give us a comment on this. Not trying to put you on the spot, April, but if you got a minute.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So I'm working on month-end reports, so I was just listening in. But it's a great conversation, but it's really, really difficult when you're in the trenches with the teams. There's so much mentality that has to change. Just going to what Wendy was saying about leaving, not doing vehicle acquisition. Sales managers just go, well, if I can't rip that vehicle, then it's not worth it to me. But no, just then they sit there and complain about what we pay for the same vehicle at the auction, right? So there's a massive mentality switch that has to happen in all of these itty bitty teeny tiny areas. You guys have all hit on probably 50 different points of stuff, but it all stems from a mentality change that has to happen with each individual within the organization. The service department, I mean, that's another spot. I talk with them all the time. And one of their big thought processes, well, people just show up, right? We've been trying to bang them on the head for a decade about scheduling the customer's next service appointment when they're here right now for service. Do you know how many of them do it? 1 out of 3,000, maybe? I mean, it's very, very low because the expectation is, well, no, these people just come in. They're just going to keep showing up. They're just going to keep doing it the way we've always done it, and it works. So why change? And I think there's a real core problem here that just stems from not seeing the big picture. And we talk about this a lot, that we gauge ourselves based on 30 days or 31 days if it's a longer month. And that really is the stem of all of the issues. And until we start really focusing on looking at big picture all the time, 100% of the time, these things won't change until we're forced. We're dealers, right? We wait until we're drowning and there's no breath left, and then we go, oh, well, maybe I could go ahead and do something different. So
100% agree. 100% agree.
Then we talk about treating the customer right.
When they're gone, treat them right when they're already gone.
Yeah, I mean, but each individual has a choice, right? I've been this is my 26th year. I've been very successful in selling cars, and people follow me around. When I left Toyota after 15 years, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose this whole huge customer base that I've had for all of these years. But in all reality, you know what people's first question is? Well, what do you got now? What do you sell now? What can I buy from you? Because I prefer to buy from you regardless of what you sell. And that was a real aha moment for me in realizing how incredibly successful you can be regardless of who you work for, what OEM you work for. None of that really has to matter. So the more that we self-empower individuals, even if only 5 people drink the Kool-Aid and see the big picture out of 100 in your group, you're really going to start moving mountains.
100% agree. I mean, I remember I was in Japan and China in 2019. I went to visit a Lexus store, I think it was, in Tokyo. And the whole experience was very different because they're owned by the corporation there, I believe. But in China, it was very similar. So it was kind of interesting to see the difference. But what really blew me away in Japan,
because it's owned by the government in China.
The reverence for the customer in the Lexus store was interesting. But what was also interesting was talking to consumers in market. And really, the brand loyalty is based on proximity to the factory that builds that car. The other thing that was really interesting in Japan was you would not drive a car not made there. Like, people would hate you. Like, it would just not be a good idea. So it was kind of interesting. Thanks for that, April. Really appreciate it. Doug,
no, absolutely. It's just been a frustrating couple of years because on one side of the equation, I'm hearing what all of you are saying. But on the other side of the equation, sitting here in the dealership, I can tell you there's a lot of reasons for why things are the way they still are. When people do try to do things right, we hit more walls than we should. And so there's a lot of frustration that actually comes from both sides, where you feel like you're just stuck in the middle sometimes.
April, I have to comment there if you don't mind. The same thing that we need to do when we're slow, when we need the business, we have to do when it's good. And somebody with power has to say, okay, right now we're making money hand over fist. However, what can we do to protect ourselves for later? Mm-hmm. And like this, I don't know if you tuned in for the original start with Sarah's comment there, but there is a way to do it. Ma'am, we really screwed up here. I don't know what happened here. I don't know that quote. The problem is we can't do this deal. We're very sorry. Yep. Please take our apologies. We'd like to give you a free service for this. But
100%.
what do I do? I
It's
want the car.
It's
But
communication.
April, how
It's just
misguided is it?
old-fashioned communication.
Yeah.
April,
Right,
how
Larry.
misguided is it that at a time when we desperately need and are lacking human communication, the thing I hear from every dealer is the emphasis now on AI, making it less human and less connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about that, and ultimately, you know, I always am the first one fighting, saying, look, people buy from people they like, and that will
Right.
never, ever, 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 ever change.
Right.
April, when I interview salespeople and they tell me how much they love cars, it says, "Do you love people? We're not selling cars to cars. We're selling cars to people." And it's amazing how we forget that sometimes. Or
Mhm.
the higher muckety muck stuff.
Exactly. But I also do believe that, you know, AI has a presence to help. Just like when I got a smartphone, right? This thing helps me. It helps me be more efficient. It helps me be able to text customers. It helped me, you know, be able to do a lot of things that previously required me to sit at the dealership for, you know, 18-hour stretches. Now I don't have to do because I have a smartphone. So I think that AI is one of those things that we need to look at as a tool and nothing more.
100%. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Doug, what's your thought?
So, God, I got my mind's racing. You know, the first thing I start with is pay plan dictates behavior. And I really think that we ought to take a hard look at pay plans and what we're really incentivizing. Um, you know, maybe there should be a structuring of a pay plan that incentivizes more about the overall economic benefit of a customer as opposed to this one particular sale. Maybe tie pay plans into the overall value of that customer for everybody involved. I also think that perhaps, and this sounds bad, but you know, maybe the OEMs need to put more pressure on dealers and maybe make them pay more severely for bad behavior if there's a way they can do that. I mean, it sounds bad, but somebody's got to be able to put pressure on dealers, and left to their own devices, they may not do that. I think that there needs to be more publicizing of dealerships that are creating the type of dealership experience that resonate with customers. I don't think enough is done there. And I also think that, you know, one of the things that we do at A to Z Sync, I mean, for those of you who don't know, I mean, we're big on the one person model, not because, I mean, the KPIs are amazing and all of that. The experience is unbelievable, but it's also the fact that they develop a broader skill set, that they're not just pigeonholed into selling cars. I sell cars, I sell accessories, I do F&I, I can desk my own deals, I can do an awful lot. I think that if there was a little bit more cross training between departments, if everybody knew what everybody did, they'd have a better empirical view of the value of every customer, and maybe they wouldn't think so short term, and maybe they'd think about the value of the customer as a whole and not just this one transaction. But I mean, April, to your point, it takes the brave few to start building the path and doing it, and then the others will follow. But I'll tell you what, once we've seen it, even when we bring in a one-person model into a dealership, you know, a third of the salespeople drink it right away and run with it. The other two-thirds are skeptical until they see the results, until they see what happens, and then it totally changes, and everybody's bought in, and they're saying, "Wow, it does work." But it just takes that. You got to shift them a little bit and show them the success. But there's a whole bunch of stuff thrown out for everybody to chew on.
Thanks for that. Joe has had a bunch of comments on the chat. Maybe he wants to speak a little bit to data, since I know he's a data guy. So go ahead, Joe. You're mute.
Oh man, I put this stuff in the comments so I don't have to say it later. What are you talking? What are you doing to me, man? No, but you know, we're talking about AI, and we're talking about that a little bit earlier. And I agree 100%. The idea of removing people from your sales floor is a terrible idea. It should never happen. The entire point needs to be that we have to bring back the humanity in sales and bring back that relationship. But I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what AI is. And I think that that's propagated by companies like, I could never say it right. Gubagoo, Bubaboo, Bugadoo, that stupid chat thing I hate, that everybody hates and everybody knows is a robot. I think it's propagated by companies like CDK that are selling a CDP that doesn't actually do what CDPs do. Totally different conversation as well. But I think the idea is we talked a little bit about identity resolution and about this understanding of customer lifetime value. I made a comment in the comments that I've gone to the same Volvo dealership for the last 13, 14 years. I consider them friends. I've taken those guys to lunch when my car's in service. The sales guy, hey, let's go to lunch. He'll drive me. It'll be great. We catch up and get to know each other. But even those guys who I consider friends, my wife has two different profiles in their system, one with her last name before and now with my last name. I have my own profile in that system. Every single vehicle that we've bought has had both of our names on it. So why do we have 5 different profiles? They have no idea on the back end, on the data end, of who they're talking to. But if you had a proper data management solution, you could almost have like a baseball card pop up and be like, okay, these are all associated. This is now one identity file instead of 5 or 6. And they could have some semblance of what I'm doing. The other comment that I made was they don't track in parts. How many times have you gone up to the parts counter? The guy doesn't even ask you your name, or if he does, he doesn't check to see if there's something else in there in the system. They just type in, oh, you're William. Okay, here, type in William. They see a bill. They don't care. They just go, tab, tab, tab to the next scene, do the cash transaction and move on. These stores do not get it right. And the idea that AI is going to replace that is all wrong. What's going to happen if for those that are doing AI correctly and those that are going to prosper in the new AI world, they're going to look at their superstars. They're going to look at their top performers who have that book of business, who send those birthday cards, who make personal phone calls and ask for referrals and do follow-up. And AI is going to make sure that those habits and those actions of those top performers that are the 1 or 2 guys at a floor with 20 salespeople that are superstars and that are number 1 or number 2 every month, they're going to make sure that the green peas are being fed those habits, that they're going to make sure that the people who are in the middle that have been there for a while, that are struggling, that are in that valley of despair. When you're a green pea, I always laugh, when you're a green pea, you do what you're trained. So you sell through the roof. Then you start to get cocky and think it's you, not the process. Then you go down and down and down. And that point, you either quit and leave the business, or you understand that it's the process and you go back to the process and you go back up. We're going to avoid that valley. We're going to keep the process front and center. We're not going to let people shy away from it, because as soon as somebody calls, it's going to show up on their screen. Hey, this person bought 3 vehicles from here, or this person has been coming to us for service for 2 years. They bought the vehicle somewhere else. They're obviously giving us a chance at business. Let's take care of them properly and not look at this as a single transaction. Everybody today has been nailing it. I think everybody has had really, really good comments. And I think the one that we don't, I think the one comment Larry made was great. We don't call anybody in and fire them for making too much money on somebody. I don't know if that needs to change. I'm certainly not someone who's smart enough to say that maybe we need to go to a different model, but I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. If somebody was coming in and, trying to make a deal happen or whatever else, if I had an opportunity to crack them, I absolutely took it every time. So, I can't
Joe,
pretend to be better than anybody else.
Right. We track units in gross, but we're not thinking about the lifetime value of a customer and the people they refer and their friends and family and all the time they're in. That's not short-sighted. That's being a moron.
100%. But then, when the technology exists and the products exist, people start to name it, right? So like if you have a new product that comes out, and I'll give you an example of this. I'll name drop here, right? There's a product that we offer, this is not a sales pitch. None of you guys are dealers. This is not something that you guys can buy. I'm just letting you know that this exists. It's an AI that goes in and it goes into your system, right? So let's say you're Larry Feldman Cadillac, right? And it goes into all of the emails associated with that. And it goes and says, this is where your information is. This is where your customer interactions are. And it pulls all that in and says, okay, Facebook, Instagram, all of this, all the different ways, the SMS that we use to, on phones that are registered with that conversation, and pulls all that data into a single source so that you can actually see it. And then they call that a CDP. So all of a sudden, 15 other companies go, oh man, that sounds really cool. Well, we have a CDP too. It doesn't do all that, but it's the same kind of thing. And it confuses the issue and it confuses the market, right? And so we have, comments that are like, well, CDPs don't do that. Well, hell yeah, they do. That's what they were made to do. But the fact that the fact exists that some established players in the market, some people who have a lot to lose to CDPs, are now offering a CDP. It don't work that way. The same way that not all sales trainers are the same, and not all, finance people are the same. You can call it the same thing, but that doesn't make it the same thing. And I really think that a lot of this, if you have really good identity resolution, you can bring all that information together. You can see who's associated with each other. You can do something and say, hey, Joe got 3 people on his block to buy Volvos. Let's send this guy a service coupon. Let's sponsor their block party and get everybody on his block to buy a Volvo. That makes a ton of sense. It's never happened, and I think that needs to be sort of the next idea, is how do we reconnect with the communities? How do the dealerships reconnect with their communities? Because in many cases, especially in like rural Ohio, where I originally moved to Chicago from, the car dealership, the Chevy dealer, is the number one employer in that town. Sure. They're the number one contributor to sales tax. They're the number one contributor to the schools and the little league teams and all of that. And like, they kind of get it, but then you get into Chicago where there's 5 or 6 different dealers of the same brand, and it just gets totally lost. So this is why they don't let me talk. You should just look. I mean, a Volvo, I think that's a lot.
Yeah.
My Twitter handle is Volvo Joe. I'm sorry. That's just the only car I buy. Some people are nuts about Harleys and Fords and everything else. I'm a Volvo nutter. I totally admit to that. But I think 5 dealerships in one town is a lot.
Yeah, for Volvo it is.
For Volvo, that's a ton.
April, you had a comment there? You had your hand up.
Yeah, just real quick. I jumped in early with the CDP, and it actually has helped in a lot of these ways to try, because like you guys, I've really been on a passion to say we have one customer, right? I shouldn't be marketing to 30,000 different customers, whether they're in service today or they're in sales today. Sales becomes service, service becomes sales. This should be one customer with one value. And we all agree with that. But in execution, that is a whole nother level of a nightmare. So what a product sells you and what they tell you a product can do and what it can actually do are 2 totally different things. And I'm not going to name names, but vendors are greedy and they all want to just sell you the product themselves. So rather than work with a product that says, hey, you know what? We have an API, let's open it up so that you can actually do what you're trying to do. They say, no, we're not going to give you that. They come up with some BS excuse why, and then they try to recreate it and they do a crappy job on it. So there's a lot of these things
hit the nail on the head.
In thought we talk about, and it's great, but in reality, the vendors we can bash on the dealers to change their customer experience, but we also need all vendors to take a look in the mirror and realize the customer experience that they're given to the dealer. So don't tell dealers you need to be a good job to the customer if you're not willing to be a good job and a good partner to the dealer.
100%.
Worked.
Sorry, I had to get feisty there for a second.
Wow. No, I mean, but you nailed it. You nailed it, because if you're selling a product that doesn't let you look under the hood, imagine going to buy a used car and they're not going to let you, look at the service history. They're not going to let you. Yeah, you'd never buy a car that from a dealer that said, "Hey, let me look under the hood," and they go, "No, sorry." It might be the same Chevy that you can get at the other 3 dealers, but if the other dealer is going to let you look under the hood, you buy from that guy, right? Yeah. So you're actually hitting something that's incredibly critical, that so many of these vendors, they don't understand selling beyond the goal line. It's the same problem we're talking about with the dealers, where you're selling the car today and then you don't care because it's like somebody else's silo, somebody else's profit, somebody else's deal. When you look at some of these CDP vendors, they're just trying to sell you the CDP, and they don't really care about your implementation. They don't care about your ROI 18 months down the road or 24 months down the road. And I love to talk about this because my buddy Tim, that actually turned me on to the Auto Hub show, I'm a journalist now. I'm in a completely different phase of life, but he has kind of a weird product where he's selling the implementation. He's making sure that you're getting the most out of it. And it's almost like a consulting gig, but he's not selling you the product itself. And there's so many times that the vendor is trying to sell you the product, but not the support that you need to make the most out of it, that it's just crazy. I was just at a meeting I was at a convention in Cleveland a couple weeks ago. It was a small convention, but it was an AI convention. Last year there was 150 people. This year there were 1,700, and the tickets were $1,800 a piece. So like, I missed the boat. I should have been in the show circuit, right? And these guys were talking about this over and over and over again, that a CDP should pay for itself in 12 months. And the hands went up, and there were some people from an auto group there that I was really excited to talk to. There were some guys that I knew that were in web marketing companies, and every story was almost virtually the same as yours. Well, we bought a CDP and we're not seeing an ROI, or we bought a CDP and we'll get an ROI, but it's not going to be for like 36 months. And the question that came back was, who's your implementation partner? Who's helping you work out those use cases? Who's helping you put that into practice? And every single time they said, oh, we don't have one. They never told us about that. So like, yeah, you're buying a wrench and not putting it in the hands of a capable mechanic. It's a mess.
Well, and I'm a pretty capable mechanic, and I get really frustrated because I hit blocks, and the blocks I get are from the CRMs and the DMS and the service schedulers and everybody else out there like that won't give me the data that I need to actually make my CDP work the way that it can, if I can take the information and actually fuel it the proper direction.
Well, it's
because they're more interested in covering their butt than making you successful, which will make them
And
successful.
that's complete bullshit, Larry. They're not even trying to cover their butt, and I'm sorry to throw it out like that, but they're not. What they're trying to do is block everyone else from being able to do it so they can try to create it. They're not. If they cared about actually covering their butt, I wouldn't be on a mission to blast every single vendor on their absolute train wreck of handling this FTC stuff. So they don't care at all about covering the butt. They care about their own self, and that's it. So, as greedy as dealers can be, vendors are equally as greedy in most cases.
Well, it's funny you say that. I talked to virtually every CRM and DMS company about integration. So pick it, big, small, in the middle. And what I found consistently was simple integration, not a problem. If you want something complicated, well, yeah, we don't want to talk about what that's going to cost. We can do it, but there's a cost associated. And what the funny thing about it was, even at the senior level of some of these companies, they're like, yeah, we can do anything. It's just going to require a big check.
Right.
Well,
and they charge every individual. So they already have it. They have the technology. It's able to be done. I mean, that's the point of an API to begin with. They just want to charge every single vendor a massive amount of money so that the ROI doesn't make sense to, again, do one end goal, which is just block. That's it.
It was a secret amount to do it.
Oh, I've heard some of the secret amounts, and at that point, I can't blame people, right? You can't even blame a little guy who's like, well, that's more than I'm going to make in the next decade.
Yeah,
well, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Peter, I think you were next, Peter. Sorry, we got diverted.
No worries. No.
I told you guys not to let me talk.
Well, I tried not to, Joe. I tried. I was just trying to.
I understand that the question was what it may seem obvious, but what are the ramifications of the years of this behavior? Well, the very first ramification of this behavior that we had over the last 3 years of implementing increased costs to vehicles that were under the term market adjustments is we put 48% of the country into subprime. And it has nothing to do with their credit rating. It has everything to do with the negative equity that we just swamped them with. It's going to take 5 to 15 years to pull them out of it. And we were the direct cause. And yes, we had to keep our businesses running. We had to do this, but there were great dealers out there that never did the market adjustments, and they're the ones who are going to have that special term, long-term customer value, and they're the ones that are that did the business right. And it's not. It really. I'm working with a guy that uses the term "stinking thinking," and it's so true that these people out there that went out and said, "Hey, let's do this because we can," didn't make it right. And with that, we put ourselves into this position. I remember looking at people back in the last two busts that happened out there, that people would come in with their cars and they'd be in 8-year finances and paying a ridiculous interest rate and paying a ridiculous payment. And they say, hey, you're advertising the same car for 1/3 of what I'm paying. Well, yeah, but I can't help you. I can't help you for 4 more years. It doesn't matter unless you're putting up $15,000 to walk away from your mistake. I can't help you on this $20,000 car, and that was basically what was happening. So we have to understand that this happened to us and it was caused by us. The other ramification that's happening is we're going to have increased turnover because all the people that were making $2,000 selling a Toyota Corolla are no longer going to be looking at that job because now they're back to making their $200, $300 on a Corolla and they're gone. Now, we all know, and Larry can tell you how much it costs to bring a person in, just a single person into a dealership. And we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And it's basically every single person that we replace is equivalent to 1 year's salary of our global compensation.
But Peter, I have to, one thing I have to do, devil's advocate time with this.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Wendy, I know your hand's up, but we talk about this over and over and over again. In 1998, it was $11,000 cost to replace a salesperson. Yet we still have it where we're turning them over left, right, and center. We bring in a new ops person comes in and turns over the store. Why? Because they sold somebody somewhere on the fact we're going to sell more cars and they're not paying attention to the bottom line. Will we ever really change this?
No, that's
a pay plan. I think that what pay plans for general managers and GSMs should be tied to low turnover. Your percentage of profitability that I'm paying you on is based on how low you can drive the turnover. And the only way you can drive low turnover is develop your people and make them produce. And that should drive everything. Somebody said a pay plan drives everything. I don't know why dealers don't do that.
I also believe to that, Doug, is the pay plan drives everything. I did as an exercise a onboarding situation for a dealer that was a 1-year onboarding for salespeople. 1 year. And in that term, they had a graduated pay plan that equated to the exact same amount of money that they advertised for the position. Now, after 1 year of training and going through it, they had a person in their dealership that was cross-trained in every single position in the dealership, and on top of that had the empathy and knowledge for those positions so that they never had a negative thing to say about them.
Right.
Jeff, just so you know, we're way over time.
That's a good topic, though.
It's a fantastic topic.
We were on time until Joe went off on his rant.
Yeah, we were perfect until Joe did that. And then, of course,
everything was fine when I was keeping it to the comments.
I just want it noted that no AI could ever get as off topic as Joe was. See, Joe, I do have to.
The last thing before
love you, Larry.
We do have to end this great show. I want to go to Sarah, who hasn't had a chance to talk in about 15 minutes. Sarah, thank you for that post. I cannot tell you, you got a ton of stuff. I actually just did a repost of it just a few minutes ago. It's a big deal. And we've talked about this till we're blue in the face. We've talked about it that we're going to pay. Right now, Peter, I agree with you. You know that completely. I don't see for the short term how we're going to pay for this behavior, because there's some good dealers out there, and somebody's going to get mad at me, but I've been doing this my whole life. And there's good dealers out there that aren't screwing people, that aren't screwing their staff, that are paying well. I just put a comment you might have seen to Joe about car dealership life on Facebook. There was one today that a guy posted his pay plan, and you need an MBA to understand what you're going to get paid. And by the way, they actually deducted money from your commission if they lost money on the car. So until people stop coming in and just buying whatever we give them, and then reverting to the old way, which was shop 22 dealerships to get the save $100, we are not going to change. We're either going to be rip-offers or beggars. And that's a real big topic. So Sarah, I'll leave it to you to say goodbye, make a final comment, and thank you.
Final comment on this. So there's obviously a lot of moving parts to this discussion. We've touched on so many different ways that we can impact dealerships. Some great ideas have been thrown around. Dealers, I mean, the biggest piece of this equation, where I think part of the challenge in doing an actionable accountability and a deep look at how we're going to move forward with this, is you have to start somewhere. So pick one thing in your organization that you are going to start pivoting this culture and this mentality to. We have to do it because our communities depend on it. I mean, think about how many people across dealerships are employed in those communities that are bringing value to the economics of their local economy. I mean, dealer employees are going and buying things from other businesses, restaurants, retail, hospitality, you name it. All of our employees, those are critical discussions we need to be looking at across our school systems, across everything, to get and retain good talent. But it's going to start with that reckoning of, we have to be who we say we are in our mission statement to our communities. And so I don't care where you start today, but you have to start. That's what the thought I'm going to leave with. Pick something, start on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Before you close it, next week is our EVs. What the heck are we going to do with the older EV show? And that should be very interesting. We have a fella on that's a local one here from a local dealer association that's actually championing EV technicians and that whole process. Joe has said he's going to be on there. I don't know if he's going to be, hasn't responded. And Brent Seavey, our good friend from the warranty company, who X-Care, so warranty's unused. Wendy, I apologize. I'm sorry. You still got your hand up. And there we go. Ian, please close the show.
And we are going to be another show on technology.
Just 1 second, guys. Just before we close, we got 2 of the 4 questions done. I suggest we do a part 2 to this topic as soon as we can.
Yeah.
Sir, you got it. We're going to do it. I got an opening in October. Will everybody agree to attend? Raise your hand.
I'm in.
You'll all get invites.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks very much. Have yourself a great week. And if you're in Canada, some places have a holiday today. So enjoy. Here we go.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ian,
thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.